So I don't think I've made an AFL like trade rumors and trade discussion video in quite a long time. In fact, it's probably been a couple of years really now. I might have made one last year that's just slipped my memory or whatever, but I've been seeing a lot of these videos online and it just kind of made me remember the good old days of like 3 to 4 years ago when I would consistently make those videos, and you guys seem to like them back then. They seem a lot more popular now, which is awesome to see that more people are, of course, into AFL, whatnot, especially on YouTube. So that's definitely a bonus right there. And I figured, look, I feel like I'm somewhat experienced with the trade talk, and I figured I'm going to go over some of the recent reports of players who are potentially, requesting a trade, who are up for trade, free agents, all this type of stuff, and give you guys the news and my perspective and thoughts and opinions on this. And before I get started, most of these are, if not all of them, reported by Fox News, which is legitimately like the biggest, obviously, reporter when it does reporting site and company when it does come to most of this stuff. And if it's not being reported by Fox, it's being reported by journalists under, companies like Fox and whatnot. Again, one prime example being Sam McClure, who occasionally I think works for Fox, but works for, I believe, Nine as well. So, again, a couple of these are going around. First of all, I'd like to talk about the free agent, Harry Himmelberg, who's been getting a lot of interest around the AFL right now, mainly from GWS and the Sydney Swans, it is being said, but also the third-party team that I think is a low-key shot is, of course, my Tigers, the Richmond Tigers, who have also been linked to them. Again, in my opinion, I think that with how the way things are sitting, whoever gets Harry Himmelberg, it's going to be interesting to see how that works. It's because it's ultimately going to be decided on how the situation is set and how much money he's going to be on. Because to me, Harry Himmelberg is a guy who I could see legitimately getting $700k a year, $750k a year. But there have been reports that the lowest offers that he might be potentially getting are around 800. That I think Collingwood a bit ago, who was slightly interested in him, I think someone said would be in that 800k range. But ever since these new reports are saying that Harry Himmelberg is getting contracts worth 900k a year, you see teams like Collingwood definitely aren't really interested anymore. And this is really interesting to see because in most people's opinion, Harry Himmelberg's probably not worth 900. But at the end of the day, the AFL salary cap legitimately goes up and changes like every year without the common AFL fan knowing. And I think with a couple of these contracts that we're hearing, I wouldn't be surprised if the salary cap is legitimately, dramatically jumping next year. So 900k might be like the new norm for keys and these type of, taller forwards / taller defenders like Harry Himmelberg. Now, in my opinion, again, without knowing a whole lot, there's still a couple months till free agency and whatnot begins, even longer really. Harry Himmelberg, I think, will probably stay at GWS, but with how GWS are kind of floating around, you definitely don't want to overpay right now for a player like they've done in previous years, where because they know they're not going to be a team that can really bring in a lot of players, they always overpay to keep their, homegrown talent that they've got, like Canelio being a very obvious prime example. They heard Carlton and teams were offering 850 to 900k a year, and then they went out and offered $1 million a year. It's just, again, situations like that always consistently happen with GWS, so they have to be careful. In my opinion, though, Harry Himmelberg probably re-signs at GWS. If not, I think if he's going to leave, I don't think it would be to Richmond. I think Sydney would be in the box seat. They made the grand final last year, but were very heavily scrutinised for having probably one of the worst free agency periods out of any team last year. Legitimately just didn't make any moves to get better. They've had a bunch of injuries this year, mainly to their strongest weapon of last year, which was their back line, and a couple players who have, of course, regressed, like Dane Rampy and Buddy Franklin, has seen them dramatically drop in their position on the ladder. Bringing a dude like Himmelberg would be awesome for Sydney. Not sure if he'd play forward or back for them. Probably forward, but also wouldn't be bad down back for them either. Again, on Richmond, it would certainly be down forward. So If Himmelberg wants to continue to play his AFL career as a forward, Richmond's his best opportunity. If he wants to stay down back, GWS is probably the place to re-sign, and where the money is, it's probably GWS as well. Now, moving on from Harry Himmelberg, we of course do have Sean Darcy, who is getting a lot of interest from Geelong. I think this is almost a certainty that he probably goes to Geelong unless Freo do something stupid and overpay for him, which they just shouldn't do. I think they should let him walk anyway. The money that Geelong are reportedly offering is going to secure Fremantle a very good pick. Again, in most drafts, it would definitely be a top 10 pick. But with the way the salary looks like, it's most likely going to be jumping, and that all these players are going to be getting way more money than previous years. I wouldn't be surprised if these priority picks, like in previous years, if a dude got $1 million a year, you're probably going to get a priority pick in the top 10. Now, because of how things are going, it probably will be 12 to 20 type of range. And if you're Freo, you still 100% take that and make Luke Jackson your number one key. There was a rumor a little bit ago floating around that Sean Darcy was going to be getting an offer of 5 years, $5 million from Geelong, which is pretty mind-blowing. I don't know if Sean Darcy's worth it. I don't even know if he really fits. If that's really a thing Geelong ever do. They never really offer ruckman big money. They've even won a flag without a very good ruckman. They definitely need one, but I don't know. It's not very Geelong-like, but that is the reports going around. How true that is going to be, well, I guess we'll have to find out. If it's true, you can basically book this guy to be a Geelong player. You just wouldn't think Fremantle would give him that kind of cash. If I was Fremantle, I'd be offering around 700, because at the end of the day, this guy is probably going to be better for your team if he leaves, because you make Jackson the number one ruckman and you bring in a really good pick. It's a no-brainer. It just helps their team out, I think, way more. So again, he'd be really good for Geelong too. Contract is a bit heavy, but also, again, as I said, salary's probably coming up. So for Geelong, that's probably a good deal at the end of the day. Next one, we got Orazio Fantasia, according to Sam McClure, could be back at Essendon next season. Again, if you're Port Adelaide, this doesn't really affect you that much. He hasn't been able to get into your team. He's just been a depth player at this point, and they don't really look like they want to play him a whole lot, which is fair enough. He hasn't, I don't think, been worth what they gave up to get him. And if you're Essendon, this is always a good addition anyway, because I think you probably need another small forward going into next season. And look, if Fantasia can come in, maybe get some form back, why not? It'd be a legitimately low risk, high reward kind of thing, because the pick you'd have to give up would probably be like 55. Like, it probably wouldn't be much at all. It'd be probably a late third rounder, early fourth rounder. Port don't really need or want him. He's probably on a couple bucks here and there anyway, so if he wants to go back to Essendon, you don't really mind if you're Port. But if you're Essendon, that's a good move. That's actually pretty solid. And then we got another one which is just super irrelevant. I don't know where this one came from. I don't know how many of you guys have heard about it. If you haven't, I don't blame you. It's pretty irrelevant. But Darcy Fort being linked to Port Adelaide. He hasn't played a whole lot for Brisbane this year. Played a ton of games as a sub. I don't know why Brisbane play him as the sub, but go figure. I mean, if he goes to Port, he's probably not going to play that much. Port definitely need a ruckman or two, but I kind of like what they're doing right now with Lysett and Finlayson playing minutes there. You know, you'll have Dixon playing time there as well. It is what it is. I think that's actually probably better than bringing in Darcy Fort anyway, but I think their goal is to bring Darcy Fort just as a backup, a guy who can come in from the CNFL just to play some games. And if you're Brisbane, again, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. Big O goes down, it kind of sucks, but if you're Brisbane, you could probably draft the ruckman to take Darcy Fort's spot. It's just a bit of a, I think, depth fill for Port Adelaide, and I guess for Brisbane, you lose a tiny bit of depth, but it's not that important for either team. Again, I guess Port benefit more than Brisbane do, because you do at least add some depth to that ruck room and for a very cheap price. But again, there are way better ruckmen who are going to be available probably in this off-season, like Ivan Soldo from Richmond, who you could probably get, and it would be a lot better anyway. But again, last but not least, we're going to talk about some more Richmond. We have Richmond reportedly being interested in the Gold Coast Suns' first-round pick. The way this would obviously work, I'd imagine, is Gold Coast are going to try and dump another contract or two this offseason. They already started it last year where they got rid of Jack Bowes and his $800K deal. That was very smart by them. Even if they did have to give out that first round pick, this ensures their benefit way more for the future. Right now, I feel like they've only got about 3 contracts they don't like. I think Sexton's on like $500K, Brandon Ellis is on $500K, and Marbia Chol is like on $500K. None of those guys are really playing AFL, except Brandon Ellis, but he's again been dropped a couple times. If you manage to move on all 3, you're moving on guys who you don't really want your AFL team anyway. To them, that they don't really serve a purpose right now for Gold Coast. And you can get $1.5 million or so in, again, in cap room. I don't really feel like anyone's going to take on Alex Sexton. I don't think so at all. He could be a nice player, but teams know he just, I don't know, he's kind of a guy that just sees the goals and that's it. Brandon Ellis said definitely be a team or 2 who would love to take him on. And then I think for Richmond, what they will do is they will ask for the Gold Coast Suns first round pick, which at the time of that report was, I think, pick 7. Could be changing right now. I think, again, especially with Gold Coast sacking Stewie Dew, they look like they're getting a bit worse right now. They could be on somewhat of a decline. That pick could be a lot higher, but with how much picks Gold Coast have, if they land like a pick 3, they might just trade down to bring in like a 7 and a 9 and then bundle these picks more and more to trade away these type of players. And if you're Richmond, you could legitimately ask about Brandon Ellis and Marbia Chol. Again, that's an easy way to get a bunch more picks if you're Richmond, but at the end of the day, this is an NBA 2K, and Richmond don't, I think, have a lot of cap left. Again, they'll have Rewalt, Cochin, Tarrant retire, who are all on, I think, around 300K. Graham might leave, all this stuff. Again, Graham's linked to Port. Might talk about that in a different video because that hasn't been brought up in a minute now. So who knows how relevant those reports are anymore. But if you are Richmond, I would personally target Marbia Chol. You are in desperate need of a key forward. Again, Marbia Chol used to play for Richmond, so you know he's good and all, and the players still love him. Thing is, with Marbia Chol, is that with how Richmond are going right now, they legitimately have probably the worst key forward line going in the AFL, and their depth chart with that. Again, Tom Lynch, arguably the best key forward in the game. I know a lot of people might put their eyebrow up at that, but if we look at his last season, Lynch, I think, played like 6 less games than who won the Coleman. He only lost the Coleman by a couple goals. He definitely averaged the most goals per game last year out of any key forward. I think he was relatively high, probably top 3 in contested marks out of all those key forwards as well. And he was like, he led Richmond to being one of the best forward lines in the AFL last year. Fast forward to this year, Richmond have one of the worst forward lines. Tom Lynch isn't playing because of his injury, and they don't have a key forward in sight. We know that Tom Lynch can probably play with Marbia Chol. I think we've seen it before. The issue was they could never play Chol, Rewalt, and Lynch together. But with Rewalt most likely gone next season, you could definitely see Chol and Lynch play. And maybe, again, you can draft a key forward still, and they can that person can develop behind Lynch and Chol. And again, after a year or 2, they can take Chol's spot. And then again, I feel like a dude like Jacob Bauer, in his first game, the limited 2 minutes that we got to see of him, he can definitely push up the ground really good. So you can still probably play him and not affect Chol too much. Again, where this leaves Samson Ryan, I'm not exactly too sure. But at the end of the day, I don't know. If Richmond even lose Ivan Solder, you're probably going to need a backup ruck as well, which Chol we know can definitely do. So if you're Richmond, you can eat up that Chol contract, which Gold Coast will be happy to get rid of. And you could legitimately probably bring in a top 10 pick just to do so. Again, works exceptionally well for both teams. Gold Coast are going to free up all this cap. They can re-sign all their dudes, ensure their future is safe, and they can probably go out and sign a really good role player or 2. Maybe even join that Harry Himmelberg race to help with their most likely new coach next season, which is probably going to be Damien Hardwick. I hope that doesn't bite me in the bum and they've got some irrelevant nobody coach next year, but who knows what it's going to be. I think if you're Gold Coast, I think they have like the most picks nearly out of any team. They're going to be trying to trade so many of them to get rid of all these contracts. re-sign all these young dudes to ensure their future is, for the first time probably ever, safe and sound. And yeah, I think that's what they're going to do. They don't really need any half of these picks anyway, so I don't really know. Chol's not playing for them. He would work pretty well for Richmond, and Richmond can use that pick to probably draft a future young key forward who can, hopefully for them, play in this team very, very soon. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you guys think some of my opinions were true? Are you guys interested in the AFL trade period and whatnot? Definitely let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. Don't forget to subscribe to my gaming channel and my IRL/long channels. Links for them will be in the description down below. But as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.